Speak it to the mic!
Louder! In the University of the West of Scotland, we've got good sound systems. I don't have to shout. Okay then, I'll do what I can. I'm sorry, this is repetition. I'm having another speech. Just do it. Yeah? Okay. Right, we've been warned. We've been warned over and over, and we're clearly not listening. We've been warned about our pensions, we've been warned about the European Union, we've been warned about forces of darkness, we've been warned about just about everything. And aliens! How can a country of this size defend itself against aliens? We'll need the Royal Air Force. It's got about 3 planes, I think, isn't it? No. We've been warned by Obama, allegedly. I'm warned by the Pope. I'm warned by both the Clintons. They should really concentrate on their own lives. We've been warned by J.K. Rowling. I'm aware I'm in the west of Scotland now. I come from the Edinburgh Falkirk area. And you've got to say J.K. Rowling. Here, you can't say J.K. We've been warned by bankers, merchant bankers, quite extensively. But best of all, or worst of all, we've been warned by Nicky Clark. Who's Nicky Clark? Hairdresser to the stars. Nicky Clark was asked about independence and the Scottish people. He said, I don't think a whole lot of the Scottish people fully understand the economics of independence. He actually said, the economics of independence. The fact that you can't pronounce the word economics doesn't mean that you don't know a whole lot about it, I guess. But how do we know that Nicky Clark thinks this? The BBC told us. The BBC interviewed them and then broadcast it. They haven't asked me. I got a C grade in economics in 1968. Grangemouth High School. Grangemouth High School? No, I'm going to just walk you here from Grangemouth. Fife, yeah, okay. But so we know from that, and as you know, all the other warnings we know because the BBC faithful to the first B in their name, report to us on and over and over. So first thing in the morning, if you're driving to work, Good Morning Scotland will tell you there's a warning coming from the First Sea Lord. The First Sea Lord telling you the Navy's in despair. If Scotland withdraws, NATO collapses. Now, I knew Scottish soldiers were tough, but I didn't know we were holding the whole thing together. The whole security of the West seems to be the case. So we know from the repetition. At 6 o'clock, Sally or Jackie come on and tell us there's a warning coming from the First Sea Lord or from John Robertson, no relation. And then at 6:15, you get the warning again. 6:30, you got a warning not to switch off before reporting Scotland because the warning's coming again. Then you get the warning, then you get Brian Taylor telling us why it's such an important warning. And then the headline again after the weather, you get the headline again, and so on throughout the day. The constant barrage of negative news with very rare positive news. Now, I did some research. Until 2 years ago, I didn't do any research into media in Scotland. I was researching mainly Western media's coverage of the Arab world and the kind of biases that led up to the excuses made about the Iraq war, that kind of thing. But I turned in the last couple of years thinking it would be interesting to look at the coverage of the Scottish referendum. Naively, I thought Scotland would be different. I thought our media are a bit closer to us. We can throw stones at them if they come out. I thought they wouldn't be biased. I really did. I thought Scotland's different. But I got a very sharp shock. I did my research, I did it scientifically, I showed bias. I sent it to the BBC and they blew up. A man who is a visiting professor at Glasgow University in market research, it's not the same, market research, said that I had flawed methodology. If you Google on the internet, flawed methodology research, you'll find that just about everybody thinks everybody else's research has got a flawed methodology. It's just what you say when you haven't got the energy to prove it wrong. Okay, so... Things come better this time. I kept getting interrupted by the first time by people saying I can't hear you. So I'm surprised. I would have thought they would have liked that. In my lectures, students never say they can't hear you. They just continue to snore. This is the biggest class I've had. But if educational reforms if educational reforms south of the border go ahead, this will be a typical primary classroom. One teacher. Doing quite well with it, yeah. When you're watching Jackie and what's my name already? Jackie and Sally. With the same bad news night after night, it starts to become a parody. Doesn't seem real, and you think one of these nights their face is going to crack, and they're going to say guffle and say only kidding. That's stuff. We haven't really got a first sea lord. George Robertson isn't really alive anymore. We just made it up, but it doesn't happen. Despite that, support for the Yes campaign grows, and you're all here today in considerable numbers, scaring me to death. It's actually I'm an academic, you know, I don't do advertising. People fall asleep to me, that's the rule. Not today, okay. Right. Okay, what did I find in the research? The research is online, you can see it's at Usenet Scotland, it's also at the University of the Best of Scotland website. Some of the critics said, University of the West of Scotland, is that a real university? Professor Robertson, is he a real professor? Can anyone get to be a professor today, they said? These are people who obviously got third class honours from Edinburgh. Apologies if you've got that in the group. So first I found a tendency to report bad news. You all knew this. It only took a bean counter like me to kind of prove it. But you kind of prove it to yourself anyway, I think, by watching the news night after night. I think you all knew the way things were going. And the bias has gone into overdrive in recent weeks. It's not better now, it's worse than it was when I was doing the research. That's really disappointing. So very, very little evidence of good news. Did you know, recent research by the same company that, who's the professor at Strathclyde that's always on the telly?
Curtis! Scotland's only psephologist.
Always on the telly. His group did research into satisfaction with the health service in Scotland and the health service in England in the last few days. It was on the Open Democracy website, and I don't think reported. It showed that satisfaction with the Scottish NHS is climbing quite dramatically, and in England, where it's been privatised, it's falling. Couldn't Sally or Jackie have told us about that? With a big grin on their faces, but no. The second thing, yes, a tendency to use allegedly independent research. The idea that the Treasury are not biased. The Office for Budget Responsibility, set up by George Osborne, not biased, independent. Best of all, Oxford Economics. Now I work in Paisley, Ayr and Hamilton. I don't work in Oxford. Oxford clearly. Oxford Economics, they must be good. They're called Oxford Economics, they're not called Paisley, Ayr and Hamilton Economics. So they must know a lot. They provided the report for the Weir Group, who I think of as Weir Pumps. So I just like the sound of that better. Did they do anything apart from pumps anyway? Weir Pumps, using Oxford Economics research, showed that the independence would cost a fortune for everybody. Jobs would be lost right, left and centre. Weir Group, sorry, I'm getting it. Oxford Economics, their research was undermined by the Washington-based Institute for Financial Research. Now they're based in Washington, surely that's even better than Oxford. And they said, wait a minute, they said that the Oxford Economics Group relies on basic misunderstandings and is completely misleading. That's worse than flawed methodology, I think. Well, I'll tell you what that. Somebody just said Scotland is the most educated population. I'm not sure if it means the best education system, but it means more people educated. So that, you know, I'm being a nitpicker as an academic, of course. The Treasury using research from Professor Dunleavy of London School of Economics. Again, they must be good there. London School of Economics. They gave a PhD to Gaddafi's son. It's not meant. It cost £1 million, so it must be a good PhD. He paid £1 million for it. Now, Professor Dunleavy has come out several times to complain that the government are misinterpreting his research, and he said Where is it? Yeah. He said that their understanding of his research was bizarrely inaccurate. That's even worse again. I've never been described as bizarrely inaccurate. Just bizarre. Maybe now and again. Okay, so you can't rely on independent research. There isn't such a thing. My research is biased. My research is biased, but I've done my best to reduce the bias level. Some of these organisations who won't admit the bias, it's worse, in a sense, because they conceal it. Third, tendency for interviewers to give a hard time to yes supporters and an easy time to no supporters. I'm not trying to pity the women here, but the treatment of Nicola Salmond on Good Morning Scotland contrasts quite markedly with the treatment. Shame, yeah. It did make me. I thought there's something about this. Two guys really interrupting, stressing, harassing somebody who knows their facts, and then going and interviewing George Robertson and treating him like a deranged but vulnerable uncle. Never asking him a hard question. For interviewing the Weir Pumps. Hayley Miller interviewed Weir Pumps, and the representative gave his case for Scotland being disadvantaged by independence. You remember Weir Pumps were against evolution too? And the interviewer didn't ask him a single hard question. James Naughtie interrupted Nicola Salmond 8 times.
Nicola Sturgeon.
What did I say? I'm suffering from. It's not a senior moment. It's got a new name. It's called craft. You've heard that? Can't remember a fucking thing. So it's sturgeon. Yeah, I think it was a fish. That's my laugh, right. Okay, there's something fishy. The BBC will say there's something fishy about my speech now. Okay. But Weir Group, as well as Weir Group had just been reported for smuggling the possible materials for weapons to Saddam Hussein's Iraq. So much for their ethics. They were selling them big tubes. Careful now. Selling them big tubes, which Saddam was going to make into big guns. But the big problem with that was that because they did that, they broke the sanctions, they were fined $3 million, no member of staff was punished, at the same time they damaged the Food for All programme, which caused the starvation of Iraqi children. That's absolutely appalling. Yeah, Hayley Miller thought they were fine. FTSE 100 company, they must be good, they must know what they're talking about. Fourth, did I do third? This is fourth. The demonizing of the First Minister.
Yeah.
I didn't know this at the beginning, though I had seen it in my study of politics and history. You remember Neil Kinnock? He was going to win the election, but he fell on a beach. And the television companies mercilessly repeated it over and over and made him seem like a fool. You remember Michael Foot before him? He wore a donkey jacket. That was enough. Didn't matter he was the most intelligent man in Parliament, he wore a donkey jacket. So they undermined him. They make fools of them. And the same is happening with Salmond. I don't think they make a fool of Sturgeon, do they? It's more Salmond. They portray him as fat. The Guardian cartoonist, Steve Bell. Yeah. I used to love Steve Bell's cartoons before that, but they portray Salmond as fat, and he did a cartoon that said, should the Scottish people go and fuck themselves? You know, I wrote to Steve Bell, and he wrote back and told me I was a fatuous nationalist dupe, and that I could stick my research up my ears. A-I-R-S-E, I think it should surely be ears. I'll have to know which way before I try it. Rolled up neatly, hopefully. Okay. So that's a classic strategy employed by spooks, by MI5 and MI6 to undermine, to get on the internet and be trolls in favour of yes, but to undermine the yes campaign. It's not new, it's not a country. Is this going better than the last time? I'm less nervous. Finally, why is the BBC biased? Well, somebody shouted at all Labour, and I think it's part of the story. Why were so few people in positions of influence, editors in the mainstream media, criticised? And I can only find out one explanation for that, and that's that they're in it together. They stick together. They went to the same school, the same one Sarwar is sending his boy to maybe, sorry to anybody from Hutch's here, but I don't mean to dislike Hutch's generally, but the BBC and the Labour Party seem to like that as a place for their kids. They mix socially, they went to university together, they often jumped jobs from the BBC to the Herald, or from the Herald to the BBC, and so on. They're pals. They stick together and they won't criticise each other. Even the Sunday Herald, which is in favour of independence, the editor there, I had an argument with the editor there, he won't report my research in full, because he says it doesn't prove that there's bias at the BBC, beyond reasonable doubt. He wanted to have a drink with me. He wanted to have a drink with me and talk. I told him to get stuffed. Publish my research, tell me how you think it's rubbish, and let me answer. And I think that's the situation, is that we journalists do stick together. Not so much the everyday journalists, I don't mean the youngsters. They're scared, they've got mortgages to pay and stuff like that. But I mean the editors, the elite journalists stick together, and they're part of they're connected with the Labour Party, sometimes married to Labour Party members, and they favour that particular view. And finally, if they think I'm wrong, if they all think I'm wrong, if my research is flawed, that's what they're telling me, my research is flawed. The way to prove my research is flawed is not to just shout at me, your research is flawed, is to try the same thing. It took me ages, a lot of work, try the same thing and come up with different answers. They haven't done that. None of them. I have to include my favourite media professors in Scotland. There are lots of media professors. They're all very quiet at the moment. They're all very quiet because they like being on the BBC as well. They've interviewed on the BBC. I'm 63, so I don't give a monkeys. You get quite brave as you get older, I think. I wouldn't have done this 20 years ago. So let them provide real evidence to rebut. But the reason they don't do it is because it takes a lot of work, therefore time, and because they're frightened they'll find the same thing as I found.
I prefer the music.